Perfect. All right, if we could have the senior directors and the practice managers up here. Ms. Clive, where's Clive? Did I lose him? And we'll just, if you can just come up on stage for a moment. Excellent work. That was so good. There's a stage there. All right, Clive and John, if you could come up here as well. John, I'm invited up. Clive, where are you? Clive? Clive, if you could come to the stage. Have we lost you? So that was so good, man. There was the tension in I think the people. So we're just gonna. We don't have a lot of time, so just maybe a couple minutes to bring.
My observation is, contrary to my expectations, it wasn't me listening to them, taking notes.
Yeah.
Summarizing. It was Q&A, fast-paced Q&A.
I love that. I love that.
And I love that too. I slowed it down by saying, okay, let me take the three together. Otherwise, it would be like fire.
Okay, all right. So everybody take a seat. We're going to do a very quick wrap up. I think give me your attention just for a moment. I think we've had a very dynamic session. Congratulations. It was a difficult environment. You couldn't all hear properly. We're going to ask each of these senior directors or practice managers to give us their takeaways in just a couple minutes. Yes, please, everybody. Andrew, stand up, please, and give us your best summary. I'm going to be timing you, I hate to tell you, but I know you can do it. Go!
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to listen to you and to engage with you and to have a discussion around some of the things that we've in the poverty practice certainly have been grappling with. The one takeaway, I mean, as most of you by now know, after the few 15 minutes of speed dating, we don't do projects. We do mostly analytical work, and that's where we can work together on. And I think what I had over and over again throughout the four groups is that, as somebody says, that we are bedfellows, but we are not in the same bed. Meaning that, in fact, what preoccupies us is about rural poverty, people working in agriculture who happen to really get stuck in poverty. These are the people who you really, really want to help, and you know a lot about some ways in which they can be helped. And I think for us is to understand the ways out of that, mobility out of poverty in rural areas. And that, trying to understand the channels, the theory of change, and how we can make these rural populations' livelihoods resilient is quite important for us and for you and for the world. So let's work together on that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Michal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really, really enjoyable. Thank you very much. I think a few things come out. One is one that was at many tables. Apparently, you are still encountering in the bank, and I would hope not in the jobs group and not in social protection and labor practice, the old-fashioned thinking about productivity along the lines of sectors, productivity in agriculture, industry, services, and then the notion people need to move from one to the other because of that productivity. This is a very old-fashioned way of thinking, which I hope wouldn't exist nowadays for a number of reasons. First, the measuring of productivity is very crude in those models. We need to move ahead, along with measuring productivity per worker, as well as per units of land. We need to move to measuring per actually hour worked and be very specific about whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in industry, whether it's agricultural and industry for the same peasant worker. And I think this is very important. The same applies to the fact that technology displaces people. Yes, this is a very serious issue in terms of agriculture, but it doesn't mean that there are less jobs overall, and that's why working together is so important. So measuring productivity is fundamental, and fundamental is also realizing the fact that the demand side of the labor market worldwide, 90% of that is happening through value chains in agriculture, or starting with agriculture, going through agriculture extensions to the towns, secondary towns, before even they hit the city or a food consumer in town. And that's why the demand side of labor market analysis is analysis of the agriculture value chain, and I look forward really to our jobs group working with you on that demand side and linking it to the supply side of the labor market, which the jobs group also does, which focuses not only on skills, not only on hard skills, also on soft skills and other qualities and other aspects of labor supply, such as migration. Finally, one conclusion which I think we should think of some flagship products done together across by the jobs group as well as agriculture global practice. And we perhaps may even increase the quality of cross-referencing of our websites, because I noticed that some of you are not fully on top of us on the jobs group website. And in preparation to that event, I think the knowledge of colleagues in the jobs group of us on your website is not there, and they may have myths vis-a-vis each other, which actually are not true, but may exist as myths. Thank you very much. It was great.
Very nice. Very good. So thank you. Clive.
Okay, hello again to everyone, and thanks for having me here. I really enjoyed the conversations, particularly because it's obvious we don't engage a lot with you guys, and that's really I suppose the main takeaway I had was trying to engage with some of you and seeing what is it that we could offer or bring to you from the experience we have, which is mostly in infrastructure, to some extent, excuse me, in social services, and really around situations where there's quite a formal through a contract prescription of what the private sector is supposed to deliver, including in many cases finance and particular outputs, and the government is then looking to make sure those outputs are delivered to square the circle and align the private sector profit motive with what the government wants from that particular service. So some really interesting conversations and suggestions about new areas to look at. We have I guess I could say we have a foothold in some of the things that you look at. Those of you who work in irrigation, we've been doing some work on irrigation PPPs, and an interesting question in the last session about our experience on when PPPs are more challenging to do. And in a nutshell, it's if sectors or the project is not very commercialized, it's going to be much harder. So we see it easiest in infrastructure sectors where there's lots of user fees, hardest where there isn't. I suppose that would apply here. But good possibilities about how can we expand this to parts of the chain, looking at food storage, markets, etc. There's some experience in the bank group. I did commit to, and I'll make available after all some of the resources we have. We do have some tools which we think are good for decision making across different types of projects, and some resources such as our irrigation PPP toolkit. So we'll make sure that's available. But what I'd really like to do is perhaps make this the start of some conversations around what more can we do, and how do we share some of the experience we have on what we've been doing already to see if you guys think this is going to be relevant to you. And just to remind you that as of July the 1st, our department, as well as most of what we would call upstream, which is mostly what we do, policy frameworks, project structuring, institutional strengthening, is going to be matched with an ability to help you on the financial side with the addition of the Financial Solutions Group, which does the World Bank risk products, partial risk and partial credit guarantees, as well as more generally help on financial structuring. So potentially a ability to help you from A to Z. But thanks once again for conversation. Very much enjoyed it and looking forward to more engagement.
Very good, thank you. So thanks for the great conversation. A few quick thoughts. One is point of entry and dialogue. I think it's very clear that that point of entry needs to be around increased productivity, ensuring food security, etc. Not a direct entry along the lines of climate change, although once you've got in that door and you've started that discussion, there's a lot of things that we can do both on the adaptation and the mitigation side on climate change. Second point would be around policies. Policies are important. I think we have a huge opportunity to use DPOs much more effectively. Fiscal DPOs on public expenditure and fiscal policy and subsidies, but also sectoral DPOs. I think there's a great opportunity to drive sectoral DPOs in order to move this agenda forward. Generally on agriculture, but with a climate smart lens driving it. Likewise on SCDs, I think there's an opportunity to get more involved upstream on this issue. Third observation is while we can do stuff together at a country level, I think getting at a project level, getting in earlier in a strategic discussion in terms of how we did a much greater payoff. To simply give comments, even on a PCN or at the decision meeting stage, is way too late to start thinking about this. So I caricatured, you do your analysis and then you do your greenhouse gas emissions at the end and your climate smart assessment at the end. Not the way to go. We need to be driving this much more upstream into a discussion. And what we'd like to see is a relationship between our CCSA and the GP, where we can talk about what are the thematic areas and the areas where we might be able to work together. There's already a bit of a discussion starting with Mark. He'll follow up from this after this meeting to try and see where we get involved. We don't have the ability to get involved retail decision meeting by decision meeting, but there might be a limited number of countries where we can move this dialogue more strategically. As we do that, there are a number of tools that are available to calculate co-benefits, to build measures of resilience, to look at the way in which we do the greenhouse gas accounting. My commitment that I've made is I want to move away from a model where people sit in the CCSA in a little dark room, cook these things up and come and give them to you, but that we co-develop these things. I mentioned that there's a decision meeting going on right now on the concept note for improving our climate screening. We want to do these going forward fully integrated with what you're doing in the global practices, because one, these have to be practice specific, but secondly, you're the ones that know the substance, you're the ones that are going to have to use this. We want to make this a little bit more receptive. On the question of climate finance, lots of questions as how to access climate finance. I want to be a bit candid. It's going to be a bit difficult to access things like GCF. Okay, GCF, maybe if everything works well, we can make maybe $500 to $1 billion a year across the whole bank, across all sectors. This is not $10, $15 billion that is sitting out there. The SIFs have used up all their money. We're trying to drive a corporate strategy that will try and raise this money because it's important. My advice is, in IDA countries, focus on using your IDA best. Don't hold out hope. If we can make this concessional finance, climate finance work, let's do it. It's very important. We'll keep pushing, but don't hold your breaths. It is a big issue in the IBRD countries. We can come back to that. Finally, knowledge sharing. I think the focus on the climate smart agriculture, the profiles is very important, getting these investment plans together, because I think this can help shape the dialogue, but can also be a very important knowledge sharing mechanism to share what people are doing in different practices. I know there's a lot of good material out there, but I also get a sense that not everybody knows what this material is and where it's available. So trying to understand a little bit more what the resources are that are available will be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can see successful first date. Let's see each other. Jürgen, could you please sum up for us?
Okay, folks, can you feel the passion here? These are not Aggies, but they're passionate about what we're doing. Give them a round of applause. I have always said our field of agriculture is important for every single global practice in the institution and every one of the 5 CCSAs, with no exception. You start with macro, you go to trade, you go to social protection, you go all the way down. Every single one of them has a role to play. For you, typically you interact more with environment, maybe with our folks from F&M on the world finance side, maybe with trade and competitiveness. Today we brought a few of the colleagues along that you may not have necessarily interacted with yet. And I'm really grateful to all of you for coming. John, Clive, Mikal, and Andrew, all of you have an important role to play in what we really care about. And I listened to some of the conversations, and I think it was very obvious that there is a huge amount of value for each one of you to reach out to our colleagues in these GPs and CCSAs and not see them as people who do other things, but see them as colleagues who deeply care about what we are interested in, whether it's the poverty lens, whether it's the question, how do we bring the private sector in, whether it's this whole, and I'm very happy, Mikal, you mentioned the productivity issue, because there's a lot of work to be done, and we're teaming up in a much more systematic and profound way to get finally into that myth that agricultural productivity is low, period. That is just not the way to look at it, right? There's a lot more analytical work to be done, and there's a lot more conversations to be had with our counterparts in our client countries to get them off this track that the best thing you can do as a country is to move out of agriculture as quickly as possible and then move on to greener pastures and all will be fine. We all know that that is not the case for the next 1 or 2 generations for a couple of billion people on this planet. There's opportunity to be had in the food system as a whole, and you can't have a functioning food system that provides jobs for SMEs, trade, input supply chains, the whole value chain up and down, unless you have a functioning agriculture sector. So this is just something we're now getting much more systematically into, and I think it's a great example. Another conversation that you may have mentioned, Clive, is a cascade right now, an infrastructure cascade. Cascade is not just for infrastructure. It is important for us in agriculture as well to really systematically think about what is the role of the private sector in what we do? Let us never forget, agriculture is a purely private sector. It is not like education and health, where you can make an argument that the public sector has a major role to play in investment. In agriculture, no government produces crops, typically, not anymore. Michal remembers some of those days when the government produced the food. But today it's private. Whether it's a big farm or whether it's the smallholder farm, it's a private enterprise. So it is a very important question for us to understand what is it that private sector can finance. And private sector includes everything, not just big corporate, not just big companies. It includes every smallholder farmer, every SME. That is the going in position. And then and only then, how can we support the private sector with guarantees and other backup things? So then the whole concept of the cascade, if you haven't had time to go into it, please take time to bring yourself up to speed on it. It's important for us. And only at the very end, the precious resources that are available to public money, we should really think long and hard, how do we apply them? I think that's part of the conversation and some of the messaging that we had here. So I don't want to repeat a lot of this. I hope you enjoyed this session. I could see how engaged everyone was, both the panelists. I'm deeply grateful to all four of you for taking the time out to come out to Tyson's Corner this morning to be with us. I think you have been able to inspire the colleagues, to be able to reach out to you and your teams and not see you as competition or somebody else. And we are all interested in the same outcomes. And if we work together, those will be better outcomes. Thanks to all four of you.
Thank you very much. Let's really give an applause for these gentlemen. Thank you. We're going to start at 11 sharp. And the presenters and moderators for the next session, please meet me now right there. Otherwise, 11 o'clock, we'll be back.